One. All right, everybody. Here we are again. Ed Diaz here. Thank you very much for tuning in. First thing, don't forget to subscribe. Click that button. Then to the right of that, there's a little bell. Click on that so that way every time I drop a video, you get notified. So, on that note, a good friend of mine, this is a very, very important video because this man not only is a top real estate broker here in San Francisco, but he's also an attorney. So he has a very wide angle when it comes to these markets. So please help me welcome Mr. Edward Ong. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me, Ed.
Sheltering in place. Can you believe? Look, the last time we met, could we have ever predicted anything near this for the next 1,000 years? Not even a shot, right? Wow.
No, the odds of this being able to predict this is even harder than having a perfect NCAA bracket. So
Yeah, no
I think
joke.
we're all surprised.
Yeah, we're all shocked here, and the fact that it's lingering a little bit longer than all of us would like is a little tough. But we're going to keep this positive because here's what I know is that amongst we call it ashes to beauty, amongst strife, we always come out the other side as a race. We come out better people, and I think now is definitely a time where we're all getting to not only shelter in place physically but also mentally. We're all rethinking a lot of things, including what opportunity looks like, how to run our lives, how to run our finances, how to run our businesses, all of that. I think we're re-engineering. I call it the COVID reboot. We're rebooting our
Yeah,
systems,
that's
and I think
fair.
for the better, we're going to come out better people. So in that vein, tell me a little bit about what you're seeing out there. Are you seeing buyers coming to the table, and are some of them just kind of looking around, or some of them giving up, or some of them deciding, no, this is a great opportunity? Because the way I look at it, I think it's a great time to buy for three reasons. One, rates are stupid low, right? Very low. Two, there's more room to negotiate now than there has been in the last year or so or more. And then three, there's less traffic, right? There's less competition, less people putting in offers. So I got to believe that that little trifecta helps a ton. But you tell me, you're a pro.
Yeah, no, we're seeing people still in the market, and I think it takes a lot of comfort and kind of knowing thyself type of thing for
Mm,
any client. They got to know their finances. They got to be comfortable at least with the next few months and the next few years and whatnot. But for those that are comfortable in sort of where their financial position is, it's a great time, like you said, for the three reasons that you mentioned. And you're getting a lot more. You're not just negotiating prices, but you're getting a lot more buyer friendly terms. It
mm,
is very much a artificial buyer's market for the time being. And I use the word artificial just because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 3 months, 6 months. But what we do know, and it's just kind of a stat and a fact in California at large, there's just not enough homes for people that want a home. So it's always going to be a very basic supply and demand type of problem that we have. But for the time being, you're totally right. There's a lot of people that have kind of withdrawn because the markets have unfortunately hit a lot of people hard in their retirement accounts or
yeah,
wherever their accounts they're relying on their down payments to come from. But at the end of
that's a
the
good
day,
point.
too, if you have the opportunity, it doesn't make sense to not do anything right now because you're afraid or anything like that. And that's something that you can work through personally and with your broker or agent or whatever it is.
Are you seeing, or what are you seeing out there as far as, are people buying at ask? Are they buying above ask? Or are we starting to see price reductions at all? Or not even price reductions being announced, but they're willing to take a lower price when
Yeah,
people
I,
are
I think
offering?
it depends on region, right? So we
Okay.
have agents all over the Bay Area, and I think Bay Area prices have still stayed relatively firm and strong in terms of at list or maybe a little above. It's
Okay.
always contextual though.
Of course.
Down in LA though, like it's I think it depends on the economies down there, right? Our Bay Area economy is strong because it's uplifted so much by tech and a lot of really strong sort of financial economies and whatnot in businesses. Down in LA, though, I mean, depending on the area, you're definitely seeing a lot more price cuts. You can get homes for under sort of list price. But
Okay.
this is also where it doesn't hurt to ask, even up here in the Bay Area, kind of just how motivated a seller is, right? Because if you have a situation where a seller was caught at that unfortunate time listing their home or property prior to the market being sheltered and whatnot, they have a real strong sort of incentive to figure out, well, how long do I want this to linger? I could withdraw it from the market and, wait it out. But if they have holding costs and they don't need to, and they don't want to have that property, and they'd rather liquidate and just get their sort of, pull money out of the property, then it could be a great opportunity. So it really just depends on the circumstances. But I think here in the Bay Area, things have been holding pretty firm, except for you can negotiate much better other terms, maybe not related to price, but also just, contingency periods, getting the appraisal contingency, because that's definitely something I'm sure you're seeing with a lot more appraisers and whatnot doing drive-bys or even not doing like it's just so much up in the air. So but before the shelter period, to be able to ask for a unreasonable amount of time for these things, it was going to make your offer tank just off the bat.
Yeah.
Whereas now,
or if you were already in contract, you'd get a notice to perform, where you're not going to get that now.
Right. And even now too, with like the COVID addendums and things like that a lot of agents are doing on both sides, it just shows a lot more humanity and people being willing to do that, because you can never count on a request made in an addendum to be accepted by the other side. Whereas now I think people are much more in the driver's seat. Buyers are much more in the driver's seat. And I think that's a welcome change given what we've seen the last few years.
I love the fact that you mentioned about the humanity part, because I am seeing that, and my prayer is that this lasts forever moving forward, that's part of the new world order, is that we treat each other with more respect and kindness and love, right? And more understanding, right? You got to give grace in order to get grace, kind of thing. And so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because you're right. We're seeing a lot more humanity at the transaction level. Of course, we're seeing it on the streets as well, but we're seeing the focus on people and people stopping or slowing down to listen to people's stories, right? Now is like, why are they buying this house, and being a little bit more lenient with time. If an appraiser, for example, decides not to take it, it's taking a little bit longer for that, or the lender is deciding you do more verifications, it's taking a little bit longer, because now a lot of lenders are doing 3 verifications of employment and income. One at the beginning, second one before they draw final documents, and then the third time before they send the wire. So we're seeing more of that. And I'm glad to see the industries come together and show their human side, that at the end of the day, even though it is a transaction, we have human beings at the epicenter.
Yeah, and I think, and to your point too, and kind of to what I was saying before, I think it's refreshing to see people kind of, when I say people in the real estate industry, kind of put their egos aside, right? I feel like I'm having much more candid conversations with listing agents or just other agents, because everyone wants to get a deal done and they're not playing games anymore. To your question about price drops and things like that, we're actually seeing I feel like I'm seeing a trend here in the Bay Area where prices have actually changed and a price will increase. But that's also because a seller is signaling, this is my transparent price. And that's not something we've seen in a while too, right? You'll see a property jump from $1 million to 1.1. And I have clients reaching out and saying, like, what's the deal here, right? But it's one of those things where you take a step back and you realize that that's actually a nice thing to have, because when the market was super hot, you'd see properties selling 20-30% over asking, and it's kind of shooting in the dark, especially on the buyer side when you're trying to write an offer and you're not really sure. This is an opportunity to feel, at least if you're a buyer and you can close a deal during this period, you can at least have much more peace of mind knowing that the negotiation you had was much more transparent in nature, and not being pulled one way or the other.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What price points are you seeing are the ones that are being impacted the most? Is it usually, because it's usually the high end that tends to slow down or stop? Yeah,
I think the high end, and I think it's related to, and you could probably speak to it too, like it's related to jumbo loans, right? The larger the loan now, I mean, the more uncertainty there is for anyone that wants to back it. So I think that's been a big deal. And I think the lower end of the spectrum, at least in the Bay Area, from a price standpoint, I think those are still moving very fluidly. But yeah, when you come into jumbo loan territory, I think that's something that I have to at least be aware of with my clients. And when I talk to other lenders, it's kind of like, how realistic is this to get done during this period, especially with guidelines changing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, and what I'm seeing is that a lot of lenders have stopped doing jumbos because, of course, you don't insure those, and Fannie and Freddie don't buy them. But
Yeah,
secondly, is the ones who are left, some of them are playing the interest rate game where they're padding their rates. Like, I had one client, one of the lenders that I looked at wanted $38,000 in points to get a 5.5% rate. Like, you're crazy.
yeah,
Like, that's not going to
yeah,
happen. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
And
we are seeing
that's
some
where
of
it's
that,
important.
and I get it.
I
A
was,
lot of lenders are
yeah,
mitigating risk. But you were saying, I'm sorry.
yeah. Oh, I was just gonna say, but that's where, people like you with that experience of knowing what is fair and what's not, what's good and what's
Yeah,
bad when it comes to making these decisions. That's what helps clients along during this period too. Because yeah, even though there's a lot of opportunity like we're talking about, there's also a lot of opportunities to fall into quote unquote traps, right? And
yeah,
it's
that's
a
a good
business,
point.
I recognize it, but at the end of the day, what you see on a day to day, I mean, we live this on the day to day, and so that's one of the things that we try to pay it forward when it comes to people that we work
Yeah, I think advocacy is really important. And I'll tell you another interesting trend. In the past, people would the first question out of their mouth, besides hello, would be, "What's your rate?" And nobody's asking
with.
me that anymore. Now it's,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
what what's your opinion? That
yeah.
What's your advice? I
Right.
got to tell you that for me, this is Christmas, because I love that, because most of us who've been in the business a long time and who really love this business, you'll find some common threads. And one of them is that we really are advisors. We really cut our teeth on advice, education, providing real resources. It's not a transaction for us. We understand all that's involved.
Yeah, it's very reputational, and at the end of the day, what we do is very
Absolutely.
human oriented. I mean, that's the way
It is.
I see it, right? I
Yeah.
tell all my agents at the brokerage, don't chase the deal, because at the end of the day, doing good work and doing honest work is what really will pay off.
Yeah, I agree. Now, are there certain areas that you feel, geographic areas, that are better at getting a good deal now than others, whether it's San Francisco or anywhere else in the Media Bay Area?
I would, I'm not sure if there's really an answer to that. I would say sometimes it might even just depend on property types, right?
Yeah,
Because I think right
yeah.
now, the thing that you have to be cognizant of if you're in the market, if you're kind of on the fence about a townhome or condo versus single family, the difference between an HOA or not HOA. I
Hmm.
mean, those are significant decisions now where
Yeah,
essentially, in San Francisco, HOAs are going to run you naturally around $700 a month. And that's a pretty fair one,
yeah,
right? So that could also make the difference between whether or not you feel like you have financial stability will allow you to make those payments down the road as well. Because HOA payments don't go down, they always go up, if anything,
yeah.
right?
It's true.
So property types is probably much more important than areas, because I think
Mm,
I feel like a if you're a buyer that's been in the market prior to this as well, you kind of have a good sense as to what the price points you're working with in San Francisco versus Peninsula, or LA versus Bay
that's
Area, or
true.
anything like that.
Yeah,
But I think it's more about what can you personally, financially um, be comfortable with.
yeah. Now, are you seeing, because of this COVID-19, more interest in single family residences? Because, of course, condos, you're in close quarters with people just by default. Are you seeing
Yeah,
more people inquiring on houses, single families, than condos, or no?
I don't think so, but I think one thing I will say is that I think it brings you bring up a really good point, because if you're in a high rise in San Francisco, right? You imagine right now this COVID
Hmm.
period, like you can't just step outside your door and go outside. You got to go through the elevator shaft. You got to go through the shared lobby, things like that. Like those are big considerations. I
Big.
do think that this whole shelter lifestyle that we know of is really going to change dramatically the way we live. Um,
I
and
do too.
so I don't know if it's going to be necessarily condo, one or the other, but I actually think that if you're looking at single family homes, I think it's going to become potentially a generational thing as well, where maybe nowadays, because of the economy and where things might be and us heading into a recession and stuff like that, maybe more people are going to be looking for lot sizes that allow for an ADU or something like that,
Mm,
which is very much in line with the
that makes
California
sense.
philosophy of being able to add units, right? And
Absolutely.
it's not because you want to necessarily live with your parents or your siblings or anything like that, but it just may become a necessity and a safer bet, because even if it's not a family member that's living there, if it's income generating, that allows you to withstand sort of the next you know future crisis we might have as well. And that's been a trend, though,
That's a good point.
that's been happening prior to shelter, but I think it's a little bit more magnified. It makes more sense now, I think.
Yeah, I see it accelerating for sure. Yeah, you bring up
Yeah,
a very good point. I do think that the ADU and the single family purchase is going to accelerate coming out of this. I don't
right.
think many people are going to want to go back to very close confines. And
Yeah,
by the way, I mean, look, we're probably, I don't know, 12 to 18 months away from a vaccine.
yeah, yeah. And it's going to depend on regions, right? Like San
Yeah,
Francisco is such a high density place. Like we're not going to see a bunch of ADUs and things like that. But I think, a lot of our young professional clients, like I think there's more of a willingness now, to look outside of the big city, right? Like here in San Francisco, this is a huge working experiment right now and working from home.
hmm,
Like imagine how this is going to change things if businesses are going to realize, well, hey, I can have my colleagues and my employees work remotely and I don't have to pay additional rent, right? From a commercial real estate standpoint. I mean, if more people are going to come out of this working from home and they can say, hey, look, I can afford, I love San Francisco and my company might be headquartered there, but maybe I can start working in Concord or Walnut Creek or, other areas that we're not usually, as efficient from a transportation standpoint. I think there's going to be a trickle down effect there.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think we're going to come out of this with a much higher percentage of people working from home moving forward.
Yeah.
There's just no
Yeah.
doubt. This is a very effective way to do it. To think about it, I mean,
Right.
all that goes into going into a meeting, it's a lot if
Yeah.
you start to dissect it.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah,
all this is going to impact the way that people look at properties, right? Is there a dedicated space like a den or something that I can have? Or if
mm,
not, can I make a space that's doable for that? Which a lot of people are right now anyways, right? They're making
yeah,
makeshift or
yeah.
now
Closets
soon to
have
be
become
permanent
now.
off. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. But
it's
you, but
true.
you you realize from a human perspective also what you need, right, and what you might not.
Yeah, and how we've been living off the high hog that we really don't need a lot of things, right?
Yeah,
That the reality is what
absolutely.
we need is very little just to live. Everything
Yeah,
else is things that we've convinced ourselves that we need. You don't need
yeah,
20 watches. You don't need 4 cars. You don't need all that stuff. That's the truth.
right.
Moving
Yeah,
forward. So, Edward, how do people get a hold of you so that they can call you and start the conversation on their
yeah,
personal
absolutely. If
situations?
anyone, yeah, if anyone is ever interested, this is my card with my information.
Perfect.
And if anyone wants to connect with me via LinkedIn, obviously because they find me through you and whatnot, always happy
Yeah.
to connect that way. So
Okay.
all for it.
Perfect. Well, I
Yeah,
certainly appreciate your time and your insight. Always valuable and always great to chat with you. I'm wishing you and your family stay strong and stay healthy, and we'll chat again. Have a great
awesome.
day, man.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Yeah,
buddy.
you too. Take care.